back to the drawing board threat.
What's up?
The Xbox dashboard.
They'll get it right eventually.
Yeah, as it turns out, doing all the things that people didn't want them to do is not what people wanted them to do. So,
A couple of years ago, I went to the FedEx web page for the reason 99.9% of people go to that page. It was just to track a package.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find it. I'm like, what's going on in this thing? And so I said, this is what the FedEx homepage should look like. And it was the Google homepage with a FedEx logo, and the search box was for tracking, and then there was a link that said everything else. And that's what the Xbox dashboard should be. Right? Most of the time, you look, it's like a start menu. Every once in a while, you have to find something you haven't used in a while, haven't used ever. You find it. And then that thing, because you're probably going to keep going, should be the first thing.
Yeah, really all it needs.
Just click A and just go, you know?
The last 3 games you played.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, everyone has a little slightly different.
Yeah. But just the last couple.
Different behaviors or whatever, but
that's... Because the Xbox version of the start menu is when you press the little Xbox button, that little panel that slides out, I don't know what
the Xbox guide, I think.
The guide, that's it.
Yeah.
It can guide me to the motherland. I don't know.
But they'll get there, like I said, you know.
Well, they at least they've admitted or not acknowledged that the direction they were heading is not the correct direction. So they're rolling everybody back to what you got today, and then they're gonna take another swing at this. So
yeah, I was gonna say I can't claim to have the answer, but I think I actually do have the answer. Everyone has different, ways of doing things for sure. They could spend months and months and months designing a dashboard that is like infinitely customizable, so you can have exactly the experience you want. But nobody would use that. I'm not here to manage a thing. I just want to play a game. You know. Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I care that they do is to make it HDR. That's it. It's the only thing I need.
Yeah. Is that thing still 480p or do they?
It's just, I don't even know what resolution it is. I thought they said
there's a 4K
upscale
option, actually. You might have to have a Series X. Does that sound familiar or something like that?
Maybe,
I don't know. I think there is a 4K option.
But it's not HDR, which is the problem. And
sure. Well, you don't like when your screen switches in and out of that mode.
Yep.
Sure.
Because I sit in the dark when I play Xbox like a hobbit in my basement, and then it goes all dark and it gets spooky.
Yeah. Well. It's kind of the normal way to do it.
It's... Anyways, it is Monday. There was something going on this week. There's no podcast Tuesday through Thursday this week because I got to travel tomorrow.
Yep. I'll try to remember that. I usually spend at least one of those days sitting in front of the computer at 9 wondering why you weren't calling me. You know?
Maybe he's angry today. No.
Like a dog, like you leave the house, it just sits in front of the door and stares at the door. I'm like, he'll be back eventually.
Yeah. What is it? I'm not familiar with this one, but Google and Sonos are headed to trial. I thought this was all settled.
Well, yeah. I mean, there have been various rulings against Google, but it has to be, I guess, a federal court trial to determine, I guess, guilt of infringement of particular patents. There were 4 left. 2 of them are now left, right? Because this judge threw one out recently because of prior art, basically. They're both related to the same thing, which is kind of like the core Sonos experience, which is creating ad hoc speaker groups, you know. You will see. It's going to, I mean, I still don't quite understand why Google hasn't just settled this and bought Sonos and made that their thing. I take it away before Apple does it. Well, I guess Apple won't do it now. They're pretty deep into
I know what I was going to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
Way more important than this.
Okay.
Way more important than this. Okay. So I think it might have been the Wall Street Journal. It was one of the larger publications, came out with a report that said that Samsung was considering not using Google as the default search engine on their phones for the next generation of stuff, which is, we've talked about this. This is like a biblical shock through the Google system if any of these vendors go this route.
Yeah, I mean, an even bigger shock, and honestly, I kind of don't understand how this hasn't happened yet, would be if Apple did it.
Right, Apple would be
I believe
the top
Apple's
player. But
double-digit billions of dollars per year, I think. It's big. Um,
Yeah.
I think it was Zach Bowden who raised the issue. Don't you have to make Google the default search experience on Android if you accept the Google
Oh,
Play
yeah.
Store and all that other stuff? I'm not sure, but that's
Maybe not.
sounds right.
Maybe that's an antitrust thing that comes out,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Yep. Yep.
that could be considered bundling, and we all know how the government feels about forced bundles.
So I don't mean to be like just knee jerk negative about Bing, but it's hard not to be because I've used it, and I feel like this is going to be an interesting example of where the default doesn't hold, much like Edge on Windows. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like most people who use Bing, who give it a shot for whatever reason, whether it was recently because of the chat stuff or whatever, kind of have that experience, and they're like, no, and they gotta go back. Like I've tried, I've done things like I use Brave, right? So I'll use Brave search. Like how bad could it be, And it's just I don't know that it's bad is maybe the wrong word, but it's just not the same.
It's
And I know
primitive.
it's goofy, but
Yeah.
you have this thing that works. Like you don't just pull out a tooth just to make a point. I don't know.
Without having all the details from what Samsung's considering internally,
Hmm.
I'd have to think that it's related to ChatGPT and Microsoft being able to leverage that somehow through the search
Okay,
experience
maybe
on
that's
mobile.
yeah.
And that it's not they want Bing, they want the chat, the
Right,
OpenAI
which
stuff.
actually explains another report from over the weekend, which I think in this case was from the New York Times, that Google is now, in the New York Times, is racing to add this AI stuff to search through a project, which I think is called Magi. Is that the right name? I don't know. Anyway, something like that. So, I mean, this is the asteroid killing the dinosaur moment for these guys. If everything, like this is how
Mhm.
this could happen. Again, I got to qualify everything by saying we're talking about Bing here, guys.
Right.
Like, this is not the iPhone, right? So I really do feel like Google catches up here, obviously, and maybe even surpasses what they're doing.
Sure.
And
I don't disagree.
it's Google, like this is, oh, and I'm sorry, and it's Bing. I mean, I just really, you know,
Yeah, we'll see. We will see. Time is always the great equalizer. So we'll see if
we will see. Yeah. I mean, it would be a seismic event if they ever, my God, a deal like that.
mhm.
That would transform their business, Microsoft's. Well, it would
Potentially,
transform
yeah.
Google's too.
It
But,
would it would
you know,
be,
yeah.
I think, a humbling experience for Google is what they are going through, is a polite way to describe it.
Well, and you get at some point you got to blame the leadership here. Like,
Oh, sure.
Apple, whatever you think of Apple, I mean, they have six. I mean, look, the iPhone is still a huge percentage of the business, but they have successfully transformed the business into something that's not 100% iPhone and like a little bit of everything
Hmm.
else. Google has had a hard time doing that, and I mean, look, if the iPhone disappeared, Apple would turn into nothing too. But I mean, it's they've not made this transition. Microsoft did, right, back in the day when it was Windows was everything, then it was Windows and Office, then it was Windows Office and Server, and that's the beginning of this diversification. If one of those goes south, and hint hint, one of them did, um, now you have this other stuff going on, and so
Hmm.
it kind of protects you. Google, for all their market power and money and whatever, intelligence and deep learning and whatever, they're actually kind of vulnerable, and the only thing that saved them is that their competitors have been so incompetent.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that old saying, as we like to say. If you don't reinvent yourself every few years in the tech industry space, you're going to get squashed. And that's
Someone
basically,
else
I
will
mean,
do it for
Google's
you.
been
Yeah.
stagnant on that regard.
It's
For that
just these
front.
markets are so big. It's these products or whatever. It's hard to imagine. Like it's hard to imagine today some phone coming, like the Nothing 2 comes out and it's like, oh
Yeah,
my God, this is it. They've killed the iPhone. Like it's
sure.
incredible. Like it's really hard to imagine something like that happening. But maybe it's easy. It's easier software. It's very easy to swap out. You know, harder. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if one's easier than the other, but I just feel like the chance of a software service replacing another software service is high. It seems
Sure.
more
It's easier
plausible
to
and
build,
possible.
relatively speaking, it's easier to
I
build
think so. Yeah.
software than
Yeah.
a phone.
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know.